load it, and today is not my day.
No, I couldn't find my link.
No, it must be something, Anne. I think it's just technology in general is going on strike.
Hang on a minute. Am I losing the will here a minute, right?
What?
Is Anne on there now?
I can hear. Oh, she's gone now. I heard her. I thought I was talking to her.
Oh God. Oh, Jess, I think we got special needs.
Carlo, are we imagining things?
No, she was here.
Thank you, Richard. How are you? I haven't seen you for a while. We've missed you.
Yeah,
Jess,
well, not so bad.
Good, good.
I'm gonna hand it over to you now anyway. So I'm gonna sign off. I'll just finish don't do the like and whatever thing at the end of your doodad. Well, I'm gonna dash, so I'll leave it to you. Anything anyone? Pat,
just close the class when. So you're not coming back at the end of chat, so I'll just close it up.
No, yeah, just close it up. I'm gonna have a cup of tea and something to eat. So yeah.
No, that's fine, Carl.
So I'm gonna dash. I will. I'll just go. Anyone want to ask me anything while you got me here?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Carl. I doubt. Well, I'm supposed to be sort of isolating, so I doubt if I'll see you Friday.
Oh God! All right then. Blooming isolating, eh?
Yeah.
All right then. Look, okay, no problem.
That's what I've been told I've got to do anyway. So.
You got to isolate. Why is that, Rich?
Pardon?
Why have you got to isolate?
COVID. Coming out of
positive. You came
out.
Oh
no, I've been in hospital.
Oh.
He's been in hospital. He was. Oh. He's been in hospital. See, so he's
got to isolate afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was flipping heck. Christ. All right then, folks. I'm gonna I gotta dash. So Pat, you want to say anything or
Nope, fine.
Oh, Anna's back.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Over to you guys. Jess, I'll see you Friday, and Pat, I will see you next week, Tuesday. And Richard, I won't see you Friday, unfortunately. If I do, I do. But anyway,
I'll give you a ring anyway.
Yeah,
I'll give you a ring.
Good. That'll be good. Okay, then take care. Anyway, Pat and Jessica and Richard, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
See you soon. Bye, Carl.
Bye. Bye.
Oh God.
Okay, Anne, you were there 1 minute and then you disappeared.
I left the meeting by mistake.
We've all done that at one point. It's fine, Anne. You're forgiven.
Oh.
So anyone, Richard, do you have news this week?
No, not really. I've been watching a few things on the TV, but nothing sort of fresh, really. Stuff I've seen before, so I expect everyone else has seen it. So
I've seen a lot of things that I haven't really seen much in the news either. No. So I can't really imagine anyone else finding anything, but sometimes you always have someone who finds something quite interesting. So I always ask, but no, that's fine, Richard. The TV is doing great at the moment because there's a few things that are going up on Amazon Prime, and I'm thinking, I'm going to watch that, especially Netflix as well. Apparently Dan Snow's going to have another series on Netflix, so it'd be interesting to see what that is. But apparently there's something going on in terms of the two princes that were that died in the Tower of London. Yeah, there's a program coming about on that as well, because they think that they found one of them that had escaped and lived in the south of England, somewhere towards Cornwall. So that'd be quite interesting, but can't seem to get my head around it, to be honest with you. But thank you, Richard. Pat, anything?
Oh, nothing. No.
Anne?
Well, someone was digging up Lady Jane.
Oh,
was it Lady Jane? No, it wasn't Lady Jane Grey. It was the one, the young one that he beheaded. Boleyn.
Oh, yeah. No, hang on.
God,
Jane Eyre?
Now, but they were looking
not Jane Eyre.
In St Mary's Chapel, and they found a body. Well, they found bones, And that was where they found a boy as well, I think. Maybe that was the same coast. It was maybe the south of England, or south of France. Oh, I can't remember. But one thing that did strike me was because I've been, interested in archaeology Cymru, not archaeology, Tumbalum, Tumbalum Mountain. I just realised that I clicked on this site on some Newport site, and they'd already done an excavation. They started an excavation about a year ago on Tumbalum. So I haven't read what they found or anything, but it led me to think again about, they were saying it's an Iron Age hill fort, and I just thought, oh well, maybe it's too rounded for that. It's like didn't seem more like a cairn, and then I realised it was probably too big for a cairn, and now I've got myself in a right old pickle. But I'll read the report and then I'll find out what they found. I don't think they found much.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, thank you, Anne. That sounds really interesting. You'll have to report back to us.
Yeah, I will. I'll have to join their newsletter, but otherwise I can't see the report. But I will do that. Yeah, it's always interesting.
Definitely. Thank you, Anne. I haven't really got news myself, really. Been quite busy, so been away from the phone a lot. Things definitely picking up, so I think we'll get into today. And hang on if I share screen
today, and
it doesn't feel like it's a Wednesday. It still feels like a Tuesday for me. But yesterday I come back home and my back, I had a backpack on yesterday, and I did have my laptop because I was doing work on transport, etc., just trying to get as much done as I could possibly can in every little bit of time. And my bag was quite heavy, so by the time I got home, I must have done something to my neck or my shoulder, because I was lying in bed and the pillows were killing me, and I just couldn't get a good night's sleep. And I was getting my hair off because there's a fence across the road from me further on down, and the gate is constantly banging. There's a big wooden gate, and they can't hear it because their bedroom's on the other side of the house, and everyone else on this side, they all have their windows closed. But it was driving me insane for the past week, and it still hasn't been fixed, so I can't get a good night's sleep for a very long time. I think I might have to speak to them, but I just don't want to upset anyone. Really, I don't want them to think that I'm bossing them about. But anyway, we'll get into today. I've put Anglo-Saxon Wales, and I know it's titled Anglo-Saxons Cymru on YouTube. And it was just something that I just wanted to look at, few bits and bobs, because like you can possibly guess, the evidence is quite limited in the archaeology in terms of the Anglo-Saxons in Wales. But I'm going to possibly bring in one argument that might be controversial, might be clutching at straws, but I just thought it'd be quite interesting to throw in. And we'll be looking at a settlement, and we'll be looking at other finds as well that could suggest that maybe there was a small amount of influence of the Anglo-Saxons with Wales, and it can definitely be debated, but I think it's just interesting to have a look. And I know Wales in this time period, from what you can read online, for example, there's lots of articles online, especially by Medieval Archaeology Journal. There's so many reports, especially a settlement near Tenby, where Wales is thriving as it is. During this time, before this time, I think the Romans definitely helped of our trade. I know there was a strong relationship with Wales and Cornwall and Wales and Ireland. However, I felt like the Romans just brought that Mediterranean aspect to our influence, and it was going to happen eventually, but I think that's just one of the things the Romans left behind. So you can see that Wales is quite strong and has a lot of rich archaeology in terms of trade here. And what I'm trying to get at is that Wales has always had some sort of influence, had some sort of openness to trading in other cultures. But I think the Anglo-Saxons weren't like what they've seen before. I think that definitely, from what we can see, that the Welsh language was being attacked, Celtic languages were being attacked by the Anglo-Saxons. They wanted to change their way of thinking, they marginalised them. And that's why when the Vikings came, I personally think the Anglo-Saxons over-exaggerated maybe, obviously sieges and etc. are not going to be nice, and definitely raiding's not going to be nice, and I'm not invalidating them, but what I'm saying is that, for example, Lindisfarne, it doesn't seem like there's strong evidence to suggest that the Vikings ruined everything and killed everyone in their path, because the Picts have got some sort of Viking influence. And when we look at the Govan stones, when you've got the hogbacks, they're very Viking in their the way they look, especially with bears as well. And we definitely see runes near Barry, for example. We definitely see trading in the north of Wales with Vikings, and I think we all clearly had some sort of connection with the Vikings. And what I'm trying to argue is that if there was raiding all the time, then you wouldn't have this mixture of culture. And I think Wales was very marginalised, and I think that Wales was just at a different sense to the Anglo-Saxons. They wanted Christianity. You definitely see how they wanted to just take over the land, and I don't think they wanted to work alongside them. I don't think they wanted to work alongside them to trade with them, and I think that's where the issue was. And you definitely see how we see that with the Normans. And one thing I would argue with the Romans, for example, is that yes, they did come over to Wales. Yes, they had these fortresses, but I think we see how the Britons were left to live in their own hill forts, for example. So it's almost like the Romans had the power, but they were also allowing them to live their own life with their own culture and tradition, whereas the Anglo-Saxons are removing these religious practices and beliefs, and they're removing the language, and they're trying to force their way of life onto them entirely, rather than letting the Welsh take what they would like. Because we definitely see Romano-British influence, because the British were allowed to have a taste of whatever they wanted. It wasn't forced onto them, and I think that's what we see with the Anglo-Saxons. And I think Wales, in terms of its landscape, was very difficult for the Anglo-Saxons. There's a lot of hills, for example, and I've seen this argued by one or two scholars, where these hills they were perfect. It was this location was perfect strategically, because you can see for miles, and you can definitely agree with that, and I think that would definitely be an issue as well. You could definitely see how this would help with your defence if you were putting your community on top of these. That you couldn't touch them because they would always see you coming. And I think we definitely see how there is a glimpse of influence from both sides, but it's not that large. I think it would have been very limited. I think it would have been just something that would have been done on the off chance, and it wasn't a common occurrence. But there has been individual finds that have been found that can tell us a fantastic story. So I think we'll start off with these things here. Oh, hang on a minute. I just wanted to go back to the beginning. I also wanted to talk about this, that there is a cultural relationship between the Welsh and the English, and it all starts from the Celts and Saxon, and the Britons were the native inhabitants, of course, of Roman Britain, like I've said, and they talked a common Brittonic language, one of the insular Celtic languages that evolved into Welsh, Cornish, Cumbric and Prenton. But by the time the Roman legions left at the early 5th century, the Britons had started to come under attack. So you have these mass migrations of Angles, Jutes, Saxons, and other Germanic peoples from the European mainland, and they were setting up their own kingdoms, and they settled in what became England. So the native Britons established independent kingdoms such as Gwynedd, Powys, Gwent, and one thing that was under Irish influence, which was Dyfed. And you definitely see how it was more mountainous and remote in the west as well. And the Battle of Chester, for example, in 616, was won by the Angles of Northumbria, and it contributed to the isolation of what became Wales. 730 AD, around about then, we have Bede, that English historian. He described the Britons as, for the most part, and this is what I'm quoting, for the most part through innate hatred adverse to the English nation. And by that time, the Saxons had full control of Wessex and Mercia. Mercia in particular became in conflict with Powys, and Offa's Dyke was built around about 790 AD by the Mercian king Offa to create an effective barrier against the incursions from the neighbouring Welsh kingdoms. So I think what we're seeing here really is that what I am seeing is that the Welsh definitely was a threat with the Anglo-Saxons, and they just wanted to just keep away from them. I think we know that they know that the Welsh were thriving at this point, and we definitely see that with a lot of the archaeology. But the 11th century, possibly earlier, Wales had its own legal distinct legal system, and it wasn't intermittently unified as a political identity, but it had developed a national identity as Cymru, or the land of compatriots. So in comparison to the Saxons, or the size. In England, the Anglo-Saxon language had long taken over these languages that were from the Britons, and the English words Wales and Welsh, which meant foreigners, Wales, came to be used to describe these free lands to the west. And so a lot of people sometimes argue that we shouldn't actually be calling ourselves Wales, because it was not what we would have called ourselves. So we'll get into some of these things I thought we could just discuss. Like I said, the archaeology can be very limited, so you have to be quite creative in what you could find. So if you were to talk about this, maybe documents, for example, could be very limited. I know you have Bede, but if you were to have a discussion about the Anglo-Saxons in Wales, if you were at a university level, I think it'd be good to think out of the side of the box rather than looking at documents, because they can tell you a limited story. But things like this, this in our landscape, the echoes of the past that still survive today, you can still see them. So this is a Watts Dyke, and it's a 40-mile linear earthwork, and this would have been this was running through the Welsh marches as well. And a lot of people discuss this of having some sort of the construction and the dating is quite an issue here. They believe that some people believe that this is an ancient dyke, whereas some people are arguing that this is something that was from the Anglo-Saxons. But there's a lot of controversies here. So a lot of people seem to think that they're ancient. Some people believe that it could be medieval. So it's thought to date to the early 8th century, and it was constructed by Ethelbald, the king of Mercia, who reigned from 716 to 757 AD. And Ethelbald's successor was Offa, which I mentioned that dyke before. He built the dyke which carries his name some point in his reign as well, which we will get into. There was excavations near this site in the 1990s, and they did find a small fire site together and eroded shards of Romano-British pottery, and there was quantities of charcoal, which had been dated between 400 and 61 AD as well. So this evidence is seeing that this was this dike was possibly post-Roman. Maybe it could have been Roman, and this is what the issue is surrounding it. Is it Roman? Is it ancient? Or is it medieval? But they were trying to date the fire site, for example, and it was suggesting that there was difficulties in getting clear radiocarbon dating data. So not a single date could be trusted here, and it could have been built on top of a fire site at a later date as well. But in 2006, they did have another excavation here, and this did provide a much later date of 792 to 852 AD. But the earlier date is thought to relate to the Roman site of the sub-Roman earthwork. So this belief that this dike was built on an earlier fire site could fit in quite well with this argument here. But it's also been suggested that it was built in the 800s and 20s when the Mercian king Conwulf was fighting against a resurgent Welsh threat. So again, this is something that a lot of people have discussed, and a lot of people have really tried to get to grips with all of this, I think. And you definitely see how these dikes really have come into discussion for a lot of people. So I think we should get to the next dike, which is Offa's Dyke, this is such an awful photo. I apologise. When I was trying to get it, an image of it, it was just every time I was putting it on, it was just coming up blurry. So I just thought, hopefully you can try and get sense out of Offa's Dyke here. And a lot of people have been discussing this because this has come up into the news quite recently. This is in the news as a rare archaeological dig that's going to rewrite the history of Offa's Dyke. Archaeologists at a Welsh castle that had just been completed can change how we view one of these monuments. They didn't specify what castle they came from, though, which is a bit frustrating. And I was looking at my notes, I was thinking, how could this fit in with what I've already read? So this is a large earthwork again, and you can see how far this goes. This is big earthwork. And it follows roughly the Welsh border with England. And it was named after the Anglo-Saxon king of Mercia, Offa. Like I've mentioned, he reigned from 757 AD till 796 AD. So after the Wat's Dyke. And in the past, it had been assumed that it was Offa who had ordered for this construction. He wanted to keep his defence as well. He didn't want the Welsh threat coming after him, taking his power off him. You wouldn't want that at all. So you have a look at this and you see how that there's a lot of dating issues with both of these dikes here as well. So when we have a look at this, we definitely see how this construction, the dating of it, is a controversy in both of these dikes. So the Clwyd Powys Archaeological Trust had excavated part of the dike here at the castle that I was mentioning, the Chirk Castle in Wrexham. So this dike went all the way over to this castle, and this rare opportunity allowed them to find more about it. So Ian Grant was the archaeologist involved in this. He was leading the team. You can imagine this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is really exciting. So he led his team out, and he was able to provide a reason as to why this opportunity was so unique to him. And he said that it was because it was how the protected status of much of the dike is going to change. It's going to make it much difficult to actually excavate there. And he said that all the Project Linear Earthworks in Wales, which is funded by Cadw, recently joined by the National Trust. It wants to target Offa's Dyke and Watts Dyke as well. So it would provide more protection for it. And I think there is a lot of questions to these dikes that we need to find out. So the National Trust actually got involved with this to provide this real opportunity. The archaeologists got funding for this, and the National Trust even trained the volunteers archaeological techniques, which is fantastic. So when they were excavating the estate grounds near the castle, so it was the north of the castle, I believe. That's where the area of the dike is being is left unprotected. So they had that opportunity. It wasn't protected because it was largely flattened in the 18th century, as it's near a high status property, but it may have been flattened to also open up a view as well. But archaeologists don't really get this chance to excavate Offa's Dyke. So it is fantastic to get this. So anything would be even fantastic to even have a look at. And it's been decades since archaeologists were given permission for such a project on this site as well. So they had a look and they started to find that maybe they could date this a little bit more accurately. So according to the lead archaeologist, Ian, they weren't excavating the dike itself, but the ditch in front of it. So back over a millennia ago, there was a nasty surprise in that ditch for people trying to cross it. And the dike was mainly built using earth from a ditch along some sections that would have come from quarries as well. And they were excavating the ditch, and it was definitely something that was bringing out some fantastic pieces of evidence for them. So it was 6 meters wide and 3 meters deep, and it was very steep. And you can imagine this as well. You can see how if you weren't looking, you would have hurt your ankle if you were not looking clearly. And they even found some evidence there from the Roman times as well, as they were able to go down much further. But it seemed that this was fantastic because they were able to find some more evidence for their questions. And there was more argument to come that this was being dated possibly to a different date to what people were thinking. So a lot of people thought this was Anglo-Saxon, but they were actually finding evidence that was suggesting this was a dike that could have possibly been used in the Roman times and then added to, because they were finding some Samian ware pottery nearby. So it was quite unusual. It was very fragmented, it was very small, so they're not sure what was going on there. But they were able to date this between maybe 430 AD and 650 AD, which is different to what was originally thought of 757 AD to 790 in the 90s anyway, in the reign of Offa. So it is showing how this rare opportunity was able to provide some conflicting evidence. And I think this is why we have this issue with the dating. A lot of people debate this. But they think that maybe they've argued that maybe there should be an excavation, if it is possible, at Watts Dyke to actually see if this is a similar situation. A lot of people have argued that with Watts Dyke, there was some Roman evidence, but it showed that that area was being used by the Anglo-Saxons again for defence. So possibly, maybe this was something that was continued to be used, because we do see that. We know that the Normans went for Roman structures, for example, to even just take the stone for other buildings, or to even use it themselves and put their own structure in there. So it was definitely an interesting one. I have seen some very strong opinions about it. So I wanted to go to this one here as well. This was an interesting article that I had read, and you can see these individuals here smiling, and I think it's because of how this is how rare it is. This is the only Anglo-Saxon settlement in South Wales. Well, that's how it was argued. We'll never know, because if that's the only one, because right now, because there's so much to find. And I think a lot of Welsh archaeology hasn't been found yet. So I still believe that we're in the early days of Welsh archaeology myself. But this was in Monmouth, and it was proven that there was an Anglo-Saxon settlement in the town, and it was the only one in South Wales at the time. So Stephen Clark was the archaeologist that was involved, and he was helped by Mike Emery builders and senior officers of the Monmouthshire County Council. And they were able to find new evidence of a Saxon settlement during these rescue excavations. So this was something found at chance. It was in the Commerce house at the Monmouth bus station. So this was something that was found by accident, and is provided some fantastic evidence that can change our opinion. Hang on a minute, got to move, hit my back up. So they were able to find, like I've written here on the slide, they were finding shards of cooking pottery. So a lot of it was coming from Saxon Gloucestershire, which we have seen as a place is quite important for medieval trade. And they were found by the Monmouth Archaeological Society when they were exploring these earth floors that we can see in front of us, of these medieval houses that was under this modern building. And I think it makes you think with other areas in Wales, such as Cardiff, for example. I always like to think, what could be under the shops that I go to sometimes? What is under the streets that I run past every day for transport, or even to go studying, or even to go to classes for people on Thursday? I just think, what could be under my feet? And these individuals were able to give me a sense of my own imagination, what it would be like possibly for Cardiff if they were able to dig it up. They were able to find medieval houses with pottery. This would have been so fantastic, because it's such a fantastic find, because this has given them so much rich archaeology. It's not just pottery they're finding, but there was bones that they were able to date, and this was going up to the 11th century. So this was definitely a settlement that survived for a long time. And this was right up into the Black Death in 1348 AD. And there was even some Roman and prehistoric finds, and it just shows how there's always a relationship to the area, and definitely something that's really interesting. But Stephen Clark, he was the chairman and the founding member of the Monmouth Archaeological Society, and he said that there had been a suggestion of Anglo-Saxon presence in the town, possibly a defended burgh, which had been somewhat controversial, and there has been clues that there may have been one nearby. So during an excavation that was on 85 Monnow Street, a piece of chesterware was found. It was a pot. It was meant to be a pot, but it was a piece. This was pre-Norman and arrived with the early Norman invaders after the Battle of Hastings. But more recently, small pieces of Gloucester-made pottery called Cotswold ware was identified by the Society following trial excavations at the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust on the site of Almshouse of St James's Square. So Commerce House appears to have settled the argument that the Saxons, after 400 years, fought their way into Monmouth, according to Clark. Patriotic Welshmen, however, can take heart from the fact that the Saxons took 200 years from their fight to the Severn, and another 200 years to Wye, and when they were overtaken by the Normans following the defeat of the English at the Battle of Hastings. 200 years later, the Welsh were still fighting these latest invaders, and rose again another 200 years with Owain Glyndwr. I think Wales never gave up, and Wales has seen a lot of history and archaeology, and we can definitely see that But I think what we're seeing here is that, yes, this is evidence of Anglo-Saxons being here, but is it necessarily strong Anglo-Saxon evidence? No, I think they were still trying to find their way, and they were very small in their groups in this area, and they were still trying, but they weren't successful. Obviously, we see how Offa's Dyke well is being built, and you see how there's also attempts to ensure that the Welsh threat was minimal to the Anglo-Saxons as well. But excavators and even the pottery specialists were unfunded volunteer members of the Monmouth Archaeological Society, and they spent 2 weeks working on this building. So these are a group of people that had done this unfunded. They had a passion for this, and because of their fantastic work, they were able to find this. And I think that's admirable, that they're not doing it for the money. They actually done it for the study of archaeology, to find the truth and to settle an argument. So I love that. Absolutely fantastic, and would have been a great opportunity as well to put onto their experience. Definitely something that I would have loved. So we're going to something else now that I thought was quite interesting, that gives us a connection with the Anglo-Saxons. So if I can just get my notes up on another app. Ooh, there is. So what I thought was quite interesting is something that I wanted to talk about here is this find. This was something that was quite interesting. There was a rare 7th century Anglo-Saxon nobleman's grave that was discovered in Northamptonshire. And it's thought that there's a connection with the Celts or the Welsh, Celtic nations from this. A lot of people are arguing Wales, and it was found near an isolated near a Roman road. And the grave was one of the richest so far found, with this fine quality sword, a knife and bronze hanging bowl, and most unusual, a boa crest helmet, which is what we're interested in here. And it was the only second boa crest helmet and the only 4th Anglo-Saxon metal helmet that had been found in Britain. Bear helmets were mentioned in the poem Beowulf, but the bow was originally a Celtic motif. So the sword was also the finest quality of craftsmanship as well. For the periods, the bronze hanging bowl was also especially ornate with a small shield welded on the side with inlaid glass in a blue and red pattern. And the grave itself was found by an amateur archaeologist in 8 inches of soil, which was near Northamptonshire. The helmet has been struck and significantly damaged by ploughing, unfortunately, but archaeologists that were surveying the area could find nothing else from the 7th century. So this was just an isolated grave, but it's been placed in a prominent location, possibly to draw attention or even make a statement here. And I think that's definitely something that's interesting when you see that. This is fantastic information that we're finding, that this Celtic motif is coming from this helmet. And this hoard in itself is called the Pioneer helmet, this itself, and it has got a few other things. It was discovered in 1997. And I think it just says to us that there was an influence. It definitely does speak that to me. Hang on a minute, I've got a bit of a dry throat. But a lot of people seem to think that there's this connection with Wales. Maybe this was something that was made with the help of the Welsh, and they put this boa into this. And then a lot of people wanted to suggest that maybe this Anglo-Saxon nobleman wanted to show off that he did have the connections with the Welsh, and I think that could have made a statement in itself. They were buried somewhere somewhere that made a statement. So I was thinking, why wouldn't they make a statement with a helmet like that to say that they had a connection with the Welsh when it was so difficult to actually have a connection with the Welsh, because they had a threat of the Welsh when really they were the threat themselves. But these would have been an emblem of war, but boars were known as the most ferocious and aggressive animals of the time. And so this is thought to be something that was in the imaginings of the Celtic societies, because you definitely see how, for example, in 150 BC, there's even a cast iron and bronze Celtic boar that was discovered in London. But is thought to be an emblem of war. Is also in Celtic culture discusses how a wild boar, for example, symbolizes spiritual authority, and it could even be associated with the Druids' castle as well. But it envisioned this warrior spirit. And this great warrior who dreamed about the demise of a great boar. His name was Isot, and there's even boar statues that are found of armed warriors. So maybe this individual had this Celtic influence as well. I haven't really read much about the if there was any findings of an individual there. If there was, there must be. But what I was thinking was, because this is a relatively new discussion, maybe those bones were put away into storage and they've forgotten about. It'd be quite interesting if someone could find out the DNA of them, because I was thinking maybe this could have been a nobleman living in Anglo-Saxon Northamptonshire, and maybe he was he intermarried with a Celtic person from Wales. Maybe he was half Welsh himself and he wanted that into his helmet. I was just trying to think out of the box in terms of that, because it does definitely feel like there's some sort of Celtic influence. And when you read about it, there's a lot of discussion about a Celtic influence with this helmet, but no one seems to explain as to why, which is quite frustrating. It seems that it's very limited, and you just want to find out more. So I wanted to also go to the next one here, which was the Staffordshire hoard, which I actually have got into an interesting sort of just hear me out in terms of it. I remember talking about this, and someone said, well, could the gold be sourced from Wales? And I started looking into it, and there was a lot of discussion about the gold being sourced from Wales, but it was very vague. And you just think, well, go on, tell me more. I mean, this was a fantastic hoard, and a lot of people have argued that some of the knotwork in terms of the so I don't know if you could see it, but I'll try and show it. But this one in particular has some knotwork that a lot of people have argued that is quite similar to Celtic knotwork. And they think that maybe there was some help from the Celts in terms of making this, even in terms of this one here. A lot of people have argued that any influence with the Celts in terms of this, and they tried to say they have a connection with Wales. Are they trying to have a piece of Wales? Did the Welsh create it? I think that's just an interesting thing to think of. And if that's the case, then there was an influence from Wales and vice versa, from the Anglo-Saxons to the Welsh, and the Welsh to the Anglo-Saxons. They left their mark. I know a lot of people have sort of discussed on whether any of the other types of material being made, but I know the garnet have possibly been argued to have come from the east, but again, something that's debated. It's definitely fantastic. This was it was 11 pounds of gold that was used in this entire hoard, and there's even a belt that has an inscription there, and it definitely suggests this individual was a nobleman that was possibly a knight that had this this reputation, and because of that, you can see it in this fine craftsmanship. And again, I think as a warrior or anything like a knight, you would want to speak volumes. You want to say you have these connections with other influences, because it shows how many people you have on your side, maybe how many people you have control of. And I think this is what they try and encapsulate in their helmets and in their art in terms of the craftsmanship of metal, etc. So I just I don't know why that was moving. So I just wanted to quickly go to these two mines. Great Orme, for example. Again, limited evidence to suggest that gold has been found there, but a lot of people have argued that, and you can definitely see where they're thinking of arguing that definitely as well. So if I can just got it up. So this is in the north coast of Wales. So it's in the town of Llandudno, and a lot of people have argued that this did have some evidence of gold being found there at one point, and some people even turn to argue this in terms of the Mould Cape, for example. But the small amount of evidence of gold that was found there, it doesn't seem like this was a big gold mine. But again, it's an interesting discussion. I apologise, I think it was making that tapping noise, so I think it's stopped now. So a lot of people have argued that maybe this is where the gold is coming from this first image. But then I had a look at the other one that is thought to suggest something else. And it seemed more of a stronger argument for me. So if I can get into that one as well. Is it the Dolcotti, the Dolcotti vibes? Dolcotti mines, sorry. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's a bit of a mouthful.
I like coffee.
Thank you, Richard. Dolcotti. Thank you. This was
Dolai is school, isn't it?
Yeah, the thing.
Welsh. I don't know. I know there's a Welsh school near us called Dolai.
I haven't done Welsh for a while. I know my little sister's trying to hack it at the moment for her homework, and it just makes me think that, oh my gosh, there's so much I've actually forgotten. So I've decided to go back into Welsh now and try and see if I can learn things, but it's definitely learning how to pronounce things that I've lost. But again, I think that the beauty of the Welsh language is that it gives you a challenge for your mouth to pronounce things, rather than just rolling off your tongue sometimes. But I just love the feel of some Welsh words that come out of my mouth. It's fantastic. And so a lot of people have argued that these gold mines are the early gold mines, one of the early gold mines of Wales, and this was a Roman mining site at first, where they were having gold extraction from this site. They think that this might have started sometime in the Bronze Age period, and if that's the case, then that wouldn't be so far from the Staffordshire Hoard as well. Maybe this would have been the trade of gold between Wales and the Anglo-Saxons. And so the Romans had a hold of this after the Bronze Age period, and you definitely see how there's a hoard of gold ornaments being found here and shown off. And there was even fantastic things such as snake bracelets as well that was found, that was put on display, and they were found in the 18th century. And it gave this Romano-British influence. And there was even a sample of gold presented in 1844 by Henry de la Beck in 1844, and he just wanted to show that there was evidence of gold. And there was evidence of a fortification there as well, where the Roman army could have possibly occupied. And they even found lots of Samian ware pottery. So you see how the Romans actually have had a hold on this site. But it was taken over by the Welsh at that point, after the Romans had started to leave. And you definitely see how they started to change his course on who was using this and provide different ways of using. So there was a lot of deep mining, and the later history on that is definitely fantastic when you look into it. But that Roman departure from Britain in the 5th century, this is when the mine would lay abandoned for a while, and the Welsh started to take over it. And it seems that it wasn't so long, because when it came to the Norman period, it started to fall out of disuse again, and the industrial period, we see it be used back up again. A lot of people think it was this the second mine that provided gold to the Staffordshire Hoard, which is an interesting theory, and something that we could definitely get into much deeper another time, and possibly bring England into it. I wanted to bring this to your attention as well, because I thought this was a fantastic find in itself. This was an early medieval, so it says the early medieval decorated silver doubled hooked faster, and it was found by Stuart Fletcher in 2019. and he showed this off with great pride. He said that this was so interesting that because he was showing this connection with the Anglo-Saxons that we didn't have before. So this would have been it would have had an been something that would have been for fashion. So functional costume jewelry of the time, it would have fastened an upper garment at the top as well. So there's a lot of zoomorphic motifs that show that this was an Anglo-Saxon piece of work, and is possibly the 9th century that has been given a date. And Dr. Mark Redknapp actually has had a say on this, but the National Museum of Wales hopes to acquire this artefact for the national collection, because it's showing that connection with the Anglo-Saxons in some sort of way. It's an unusual find, and it's something that we don't see every day, so it'd be lovely for the public to actually marvel over this as well. And I love the detailing of it. I absolutely do. But like I said, Dr. Mark Redknapp, so he works for the National Museum of Wales, so this is why he has a lot of say on these things. But he's the deputy head of collections and research, and he said this was an unusual object, and you can definitely see how this is an unusual object because it has this Anglo-Saxon style to it, and this is identified in Wales. You wouldn't expect that in Wales. It would be something you'd expect in England. And you can see how this possibly would have shown us the identity of the original owner through their status. Is showing that there was some exposure and some influence to Anglo-Saxon styles in early Welsh kingdoms. And I think this would have been seen with trade. Maybe the Welsh did try and trade with the Anglo-Saxons, and the Anglo-Saxons just tried taking over, but they did try. And I think Wales just saw any culture as a culture to trade with rather than just exclude. I think they understood with having more connections meant different luxuries, different things to have into the country. But I think we see how Wales, because of this, has this melting pot of styles, all different styles, and it's quite diverse. And I think this is what I think is fantastic about the Welsh identity. To me, the Welsh identity means diversity. It means a lot of cultures coming into it throughout our history, even to this present day. And I think this is something that should be celebrated and taken advantage of when looking at. It should be taken advantage of by museums. It'd be just a fantastic display to just see all different cultures from past to present, and this would be one of them. How Wales is willing to mix with other cultures and trade with other cultures because it benefited them just as much as it benefited the other culture as well. They weren't like the Anglo-Saxons trying to take power of everything and trying to take land. They wanted to grow, and they were happy to accept anyone to grow and help them grow too, which that's what I feel like Wales is to me, and it's something that's been ingrained in Wales for many, many years. And I just wanted to come up to another hoard as well, which was absolutely fantastic. So the top there is bits of the cloth bag that was carrying these coins. And it's definitely interesting find because the cloth bag, I just think it just adds a nice feel to it as well. So this is actually on the National Museum of Wales online, and they've provided a good article on there by Edward Besley. And some fantastic images as well of them. They cleaned the penny in half. It was almost like those Sillet Bang adverts where they dip the penny in the water with the solution, and half of the penny is clear and the other half is all dirty. So I think that was just them showing off how great they can look after these pennies and show that they look good as new when you look at some of these images. So it was in April 2002. There was metal detectorist John L. Jones, Fred Edwards, and Richard Johns, and they had a fantastic find. And this is a once in a lifetime find for some metal detectorists. But this was in Monmouthshire, and going back to that settlement that was near there, that it shows that there was some sort of Anglo-Saxon influence to the area, possibly. But there was a scatter hoard of 199 silver pennies there. and there was coins of the Anglo-Saxon king Edward the Confessor, which was 1042 to 1066. And you also had the Norman king, William the Conqueror, from 1066 to 1087. And the hoard predates the founding of Abergavenny, which was by the 1080s. The hoard itself, you see how it's encrusted with iron deposits as well, and there's even traces of the fabric that you can see in the top image, which has been showing that there was it was being held by a cloth bag. But it's not sure whether it was deliberately hidden or if it was just simply lost. Either way, I think is evidence that their owner was poorer by the significant amount in this cloth bag, which would have been 16 shillings and 7 pence, which that's a lot to lose. If they did drop it, it just seems like something that would have been hidden possibly. But this would have represented several months of wages for the average person. So definitely something that you would not want to lose. You could just imagine, couldn't you, just riding on your horse, you get home and you look and it's gone. You could just imagine the panic, the disappointment in yourself, that how gutted you would feel. I've only lost £5 in the street and I felt gutted. I can't imagine what it'd feel like losing several months worth of wages. I'd be beside myself. But again, they're a unique historical source of these coins, because the names on them are providing a place of minting and the money are responsible as well. People had easy access to network of mints across England. There was none in Wales, and every few years, quite a few people argue there was some minting in Wales, but that's another discussion in itself. But every few years, existing money was being called in to be reminted with a new design. And the king, of course, took a cut on each occasion. The Abergavenny hoard includes 36 identifiable mints, as well as some irregular issues which cannot be be located. The coins from mints in the region are like Hereford, which was 34 coins, Bristol 24, are the commonest, which are outweighing big mints such as London 19 and Winchester in 20. But at the other end of the scale, there are single coins from small mints such as Dorset or even Norfolk as well, and Derby. But hoards in Western Britain are so rare in this time period, because you see how there's unrecorded combinations of mints and money, and it's just really difficult to try and pinpoint what's going on here. We'll possibly never know why these coins ended up in a corner of a field in Monmouthshire, but is expanding our knowledge of the coinage ourselves is important, because it just shows the monetary conditions of the area after the Norman conquest. And I personally believe that this could have had a connection with that settlement, that Anglo-Saxon settlement as well. And there has been conservation on these because they were covered in this iron concentrate, and some of them had been stuck together, as you can see there. So they had to be careful, and they were ensuring that they could separate them. And they had to be careful. So, for example, a scalpel would have damaged the silver, and chemicals had failed to shift the iron as well. So the solution that they had was a modern tool. It was a laser. They used a laser as a source of light that was providing energy into a form of a very intense wavelength with a narrow beam that was only spreads a few millimeters. But this was again successful, removing much of the iron crust on this, and it had this new looking penny by the end of it. So they had done some fantastic conservation work on that. And if I could try and get a comparison of what they look like for the end, and I'll just leave it on to my phone for the end as well, so we'll come to the conclusion. Like I said, there's limited evidence that the Anglo-Saxons had firmly got into Wales. I think that Monmouthshire area is quite interesting. Be interesting to see if there's any more archaeology that could suggest that the Anglo-Saxons were there. And I feel like we have some hints to actually argue that. And some of the finds that we're finding are absolutely fantastic. I definitely think that the Celts had some influence on the Anglo-Saxons, and I think it's almost like the Anglo-Saxons are saying, hey, I have a connection with the Welsh, so that makes me more powerful because they'll listen to me, sort of thing, if that makes sense, if you have a strong connection with them. Whereas the Welsh are probably just seeing it as another person to trade with, that benefits us. But if you try and mess with us, we'll make sure that we're a threat to you. And I think that the Welsh did encounter the Anglo-Saxons and possibly traded them in terms of the coins, but again, it's something that we're still learning about every day, and this is why I think the archaeology is still in its early days as well. So if I exit that and sort of stop share, if I could show you the coins that have been, if you can see them, but the comparison, this is this really clear looking side and this really dirty side, even in terms of that one there. You can see how there's a difference, and this laser has done this rather than using chemicals or a scalpel. We have this difference. Not very clear, I apologize, but I just thought it was fantastic to look at that and just see the difference. It's almost like they've just dipped it into the water. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that today. It was an interesting one, and I would like to have a look, but it's not in Wales. It would possibly be something that I could try and find and tie in, but there's cave dwellings of Anglo-Saxons. It'd be quite interesting to talk about maybe one day, but we'll be doing something Welsh next week again. So Anne, is there anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Well, I think it's a very interesting area, you know, the borderlands of you know, before the Normans came. Yeah, I mean, I know that there was some Duke saint or other went to the river that Worcester and Tewkesbury were on. I can't remember what the name is. Is it the Severn? Is it the Severn? But near a place that we used to stop off for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
There was a Jute church, you know, cathedral. Actually, it was you know, it wasn't big, you know, but it was part of that history, you know, the Anglo-Saxon history. And you know, it was a time when there weren't a lot of Anglo-Saxons. They didn't come over, you know, a lot of them. They just came small groups of people. So they wouldn't have been a threat, I don't think. I think there would be a lot of interaction between the borders, you know, the Welsh people and the what little groups there were.
Yeah,
you know, on the borders. I don't think they, you know, it depends what period you're looking at. Like the early Anglo-Saxons coming over, then they didn't come over in hordes. I mean, they just came over in groups, you know, and so I think there's still a lot to find.
Yeah, definitely, Anne. I agree with you. It just makes you think what is out there to be found.
And you know what you said about the medieval, you know, in Monmouthshire, and you know, walking, like coming to Bridgend, you know, and wondering. I mean, you know, we've got a medieval hospital on the hill, so we've got medieval, you know, in Bridgend, and it's just nobody's looked for it.
Yeah,
you can't knock buildings down, can you? You know.
No, it was a shame, is because it's sealed by all the urban development, and you think, oh well, at least the archaeology is kind of safe being sealed. But then it makes you think, well, is it? And it just makes you think, oh, I wish I could just sort of bulldoze every building and just sort of build it from scratch as soon as I can find something. But that's not practical, and you can't do that.
No.
But yes,
Anna, there are drawings, you know, of you know, black and white drawings of Bridgend and all the towns have had these black and white drawings.
Yeah.
So we got an idea that there were buildings and that. But no, it's fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Pat, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, it was very interesting. Yes. Where is the double hook? Where is
yes,
it?
hang on.
Where do they hold it?
The double hook. Is it this one? Hang on.
Oh, yeah.
Is it the silver double hooked fastener?
Yeah.
Yes, it's being held in the National Museums of Wales at the moment. I don't know whether it's on their website.
Yeah.
But Mark Redknapp has had a discussion about it, and I think they are looking to actually acquire this for public use. So I'm not sure whether they have acquired it, but this is something that they want to, and Mark Redknapp has discussed why this is important to be acquired. So yeah, if I can find if they've got it on their collections, I'll send it straight over to you if you'd like, Pat.
Okay.
Or get
and the
Carl
helmet,
to.
that boar helmet, is that in Cardiff as well?
No, the boar helmet itself was found. Hang on, it was found in Northamptonshire.
Oh, right.
But it's just this connection with this Celtic influence that was brought into it, which I think is quite interesting. I think we did leave our mark, and I think Wales is so interesting with the art as well. I think it would be something you would want to hold and show off with pride in a way, because it gives you connections with another culture. But I think the Anglo-Saxons were trying to say that maybe having connections with the Welsh is that maybe we've got connections, but we're letting them think that they've got connections, we've got power over them, which isn't true, because they were just as scared of us. Thank you, Pat. Richard, anything you'd like to ask or add?
Yeah, I could imagine that there is a lot more Anglo-Saxon influence in Wales than what we're led to believe. You know, King Alfred, he had quite a few sort of alliances with Welsh princes, and I'm sure there was,
and there's the church, that's very influential as well. So,
bring that sort of intermarrying into it. I just can't really. I know that there would be a lot of Welsh who would be wary of the Anglo-Saxons, but I think there would have been this intermarrying because we see it in the influence, and I think this is why I wanted that individual in the boa helmet to be identified, because that would be fantastic if we found that they were a mixture of Anglo-Saxon and Welsh as well. I think that would have just fitted my argument beautifully. So if anyone that is watching that wants to do anything like that in the future, go and find it in the collections and come back to me and be greatly appreciated. So thank you everyone as well. Have a lovely evening. I'll see you tomorrow, Anne. And Richard, I hope you're well and you're safe. And we'll see you once isolation is over, hopefully, in Carl's office. And Pat, hopefully we see you soon in Bridgend. I know we're missing you as well. So take care, everyone.
Care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Cheers, Anne. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hi guys, so if you'd like to like and subscribe to Carl's account, if you love archaeology and history like I do, please give us a follow. We do actually do videos on a Thursday morning and on a Wednesday evening from 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. is Carl's lesson, and then from 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. is my lesson. Sometimes we do go a little bit over, and that's the beauty of all of this, is that you get more time with us. But like and subscribe if you like that as well, because it helps us reach other people, and that really does help us out. So thank you everyone, take care. I hope you have a lovely evening as well yourselves if you're watching on YouTube, and